this guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
Before moving on to question period, I would like to note that since we have returned from our summer recess, there have been a number of questions and comments that have gone beyond the bounds in this House.
In question period, to only let the person who is speaking to ask the question and the person responding to respond, and to slow down your heckling. Oral questions.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Carbon tax Carney became conflict of interest Carney when the Prime Minister named him to be effectively the phantom finance minister to advise on economic policy while he presides over a massive multi-billion-dollar multinational corporation that sought 10 billion Canadian tax dollars to take over our pension system. He's got a $2 billion loan for a friend, and now we learn that the economic task force he heads up has only one person. Isn't he a walking, talking conflict of interest?
Yeah. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we are glad to get economic advice from smart former Canadian central bankers like Mark Carney and like Steve Pelosi, who is doing some great work advising us on how to encourage Canadian pension funds to invest more in Canada. Meanwhile, Mr. Speaker, on that side of the House, they get their foreign policy advice from Elon Musk and from Tucker Carlson. They should be ashamed of themselves. The people of Ukraine certainly know what's going on.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, today the Premier, Mr. Speaker, the very courageous and common sense Premier of New Brunswick launched a renewed lawsuit against the quadrupling carbon tax. He's pointing out that this carbon tax will force the layoff of nurses, doctors, and teachers because of the extra cost it imposes on operating schools and hospitals. Instead of requiring courts to decide on the quadrupling carbon tax, why won't the Prime Minister let the people decide in a carbon tax election?
Yeah. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
I am so glad that the Leader of the Opposition gives me an opportunity to talk about the price on pollution, because we made a great announcement just a few minutes ago, and that is that small businesses in the province of New Brunswick that he was talking about that have 499 employees are going to get rebates of $43,413. In the province of Ontario that we both represent, a business of 499 employees can get a rebate of nearly $300,000. They're going to get that money directly in their bank accounts by the end of the year.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Almost a year ago today, Tehran-backed terrorists unleashed the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust. Ever since, they've continued to push this genocidal aim. Today, hundreds of rockets came from Tehran towards Israel, forcing millions into shelter. 2 terrorist attacks carried out. This Prime Minister has talked out of both sides of his mouth, saying one thing to one group, the opposite to another. Will the Prime Minister state clearly that Israel has the right to defend itself by defeating Hezbollah, Hamas, the IRGC, and all the other terrorists?
The Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, we all seen the attacks by Iran against Israel today, and of course we condemn them unequivocally. These attacks from Iran will only serve to further escalate the region. And therefore, that is why I've been in contact with my Israeli counterpart this morning, and I've been in contact with many G7 foreign ministers as well as Arab countries' foreign ministers. This is a very dangerous time for the Middle East, and we need to make sure that this war stops. Thank you.
And ask the Honourable Member from St. Albert, Edmonton, please, to only take the floor when he is recognized to do so. L'honorable député de La Prairie.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. If the Liberals don't want an election now, then they have to support all seniors equally and fairly. That's why seniors advocacy groups are here today on the Hill. The FADOC and its Mauricie branch, the AQDR, the Outaouais AQRP and AREQ, the Table de Concertation des Aînés des Laurentides, they're all here today to ask the federal government to stop having two classes of seniors. They're here to demand a 10% increase in OAS for those 74 and under. Will the government finally listen to them? The Honourable Minister of Labour and Seniors. Mr. Speaker, we're shocked by what the Bloc Québécois is saying. Because what did they vote against? They voted against dental care, which is currently saving hundreds of dollars for hundreds of thousands of Quebecers and Canadians. We're shocked that the Bloc Québécois voted against the guaranteed income supplement and its increase. The GIS helps the least well-off seniors, Mr. Speaker. The Bloc Québécois is so hypocritical, and we are shocked.
From Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes.
In the latest conflict of interest from a government of serial ethical lawbreakers, the Prime Minister wants his buddy Mark Carney's company to be in charge of $10 billion of Canadians' pension dollars. Now, he doesn't want him to be subjected to any of the conflict of interest rules. All the power, all the money, none of the accountability. After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up for Carbon Tax Carney and this Prime Minister. Why don't they just call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Another week, another tired line from the Conservatives. When it comes to Canadians who disagree with their vision of the country, instead of allowing for that disagreement to happen, they attack them personally and try to bring them down. We have seen this time and time again from Conservatives, whether it's the news media like CBC or CTV, or whether it's eminent Canadians who give of themselves. The Conservatives only have one objective, and that's to tear down Canadians who don't share their beliefs. Thank you,
Good
Mr.
answer.
Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes.
It's no surprise that that member wants to deflect from her Prime Minister, who was twice found guilty of breaking ethics laws himself, and that's why he's trying to protect his buddy Carbon Tax Carney from the ethical rules that would, of course, call into question this $10 billion of Canadians' pensions that they want to let him get his hands on in exchange for what? Advice that he's going to give them from Bay Street that everyone on Main Street can just eat cake when they can't afford any more of his rising carbon tax. It's been 9 years of their failed NDP Liberal policies. Canadians are out of money. They're out of time. When can we have an election?
Before the Honourable Minister takes her spot, I did hear a comment out of turn. I think it was from a minister. I couldn't figure out who it is, but I'll ask members to please, again, don't take the floor unless recognized by the chair. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, what we see from the Conservative members of Parliament is that they just can't handle being criticized. It's the same way they treat the media. When the media asks them tough questions about what they are putting forward in terms of their agenda for Canadians, what do? They attack them. This is what they do with the media. This is what they do with eminent Canadians. This is what they do with any Canadian who doesn't share the vision for Canada. Mr. Speaker, we should be talking up Canada. We should be talking up Canadians instead of talking them down like the Conservatives.
Yeah, good answer.
The Honourable Member from Calgary Nose Hill.
Mr. Speaker, first the Liberals announced that Mark Carney, the chair of Brookfield, a $1 trillion corporation whose interests span the entire federal government, would be setting Canada's economic policy. Then news broke that Brookfield had been lobbying for a federally funded multi-billion-dollar investment fund that they would manage. Then, over this past weekend, Mark Carney sent out a fundraising email blast via the Liberal Party's donation list. Interesting. Did the Liberals or Brookfield clear any of this with the lobbying commissioner?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Again, Mr. Speaker, what we see from the Conservatives is when there are Canadians that don't share their vision of Canada, they talk them down. They try.
Invite the Honourable Minister to start again, but I'm going to ask members, please, again, do not take the floor until they're recognized by the Chair. The Honourable Leader of the Government from the House of Commons from the top.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's okay. I understand this response makes them uncomfortable because they know it's true, Mr. Speaker. Right. But when it comes to Canadians who don't share their vision of Canada, what do Conservative members of Parliament do? They talk them down. They try to bring them down. They don't like having people push against their agenda. They don't like it when they're asked tough questions, or when smart, intelligent people don't share their vision of Canada, they try to take them down instead of having that debate. Thank you.
That's right. Good answer.
The Honourable Member from Calgary Nose Hill.
Grifols, a big pharma company, recently gained approval from Canadian Blood Services, which is regulated by the Liberal government, to acquire Canadian plasma resources, a critical source of blood products for Canadians. But this summer, reports said that under this contract, Canadian blood plasma products could be sold abroad for profit by Grifols, something that could jeopardize supply in Canada. Guess which company has been in takeover talks with Grifols this whole time? Brookfield. Is that why the Liberals didn't clear Carney with the lobbying commissioner?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, Canada is known everywhere in the world as being absolutely one of the best jurisdictions to manage blood supply, and that is something that we are absolutely committed to continuing. I think that casting aspersions and trying to manufacture things is something we're used to on the other side, but that reputation that we've won hard-earned to make sure that when Canadians need blood that it's there for them and it's there for them safely is something that we're going to continue unabated to be committed to.
I'm going to ask the Honourable Member from St. Margaret's South Shore, please, to he's been keeping his voice down, but it's been regular, so I'm just going to ask him to please not do that. The Honourable Member from Thornhill.
After 9 years of this Liberal NDP costly coalition, grocery prices are up 27%. Gas prices are up 40%, and now new data from Equifax shows that credit card debt is up too. The average Canadian now has $4,300 on their credit card, the highest on record since the last recession. Why are these Liberals using their carbon tax to inflate the price of everything, punishing families and forcing them to take on more debt just to get by?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I am really glad to have the chance to talk about our carbon rebates and our policies on credit cards, because today we announced that later this month, thanks to our government's negotiations with credit card companies, the fees that small businesses have to pay are going down. That is good news for small businesses across the country. And you know what else is good news? Small businesses are going to get big carbon rebates. That member of Parliament, like me as an Ontario MP, an Ontario business with 10 employees is going to be getting
The Honourable Member from Thornhill.
Speaker, this might be the only person left in the world that thinks paying more tax makes you richer and somehow stops climate change. The carbon tax isn't about the environment, and it's certainly not about affordability. It's about getting more money for her spending addiction. Even Catherine McKenna admits that their plan was always to spend your money. It's clear that they've run out of money. They're going to raise the tax over and over again to 61 cents a litre as 2 million people use a food bank. How many more people will face poverty before they reverse course?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I will give them a number: 69 million cars in avoided pollution. That's our number, Mr. Speaker. That's my number. That's our number on this side of the House. If we listen to them, we would do nothing to fight climate change. Pollution would be even worse. Emissions would be 41% higher than what we've been doing. We're working to fight climate change. We're working to support Canadians to create the economy of the 21st century. They have nothing to offer, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Foothills.
The NDP Liberals are desperately trying to convince Canadians that they're better off paying a higher and higher carbon tax. But the truth hurts. it appears that food inflation isn't a global issue, it's an NDP Liberal issue.
Right.
According to the food professor, because of the carbon tax, wholesale food prices in Canada are up 34% in every single category. And wholesale food prices in Canada are 37% higher than they are in the United States. Again, because of the carbon tax.
Exactly.
Will the Prime Minister just admit he was wrong about his carbon tax and call a carbon tax election?
Let's go.
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, it seems that Conservatives are now starting to listen to economists, and they quoted Trevor Toombs. Well, let's say what Trevor Toombs has to say about carbon pricing and price on food, Mr. Speaker. And I quote, "While concern around affordability is clearly warranted, climate policies are not a significant driver of the rising cost of living, nor will removing policies such as carbon pricing materially improve the situation." Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable from Foothills.
The NDP Liberals just can't handle the truth. And the truth is Canadians are being forced to food banks in record numbers. And even the Liberal member from Winnipeg North said when you attribute the increase in food prices of 34% to the carbon tax, that's absurd. But the food professor's own data shows the Liberals are wrong.
That's right.
What is absurd is increasing the carbon tax when 9 million Canadians don't know when their next meal is coming from.
Exactly.
Will the Prime Minister admit their tax plan is this carbon tax, call a carbon tax election so Canadians can put food on the table?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And being a farmer myself, I know what it's like for farmers to be on the front line of climate change. Our farmers face devastating storms like Hurricane Fiona, which tore down barns, killed cattle. We have floods, fires right across the country. This is the reason, one of the reasons why food prices are so high. We put a price on pollution that works, Mr. Speaker. And also, my honourable colleague, in his riding, his average farmer will receive $1,800 a year in carbon rebate. I know the Conservative Party.
The honourable member for Torres-de-Blainville.
Who had just had 2 questions, can have more questions if they could work that out with their leadership, but not at this time. But I'll be happy to recognize the honourable member when he stands up on his feet when it is time for the people from his political formation to get a question. Alors.
Order.
The honourable member from New Brunswick Southwest.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of NDP Liberals, taxes up, costs up, crime's up, and time's up for this costly coalition's carbon tax scam. 9 premiers are now against the Liberal carbon tax. Today in New Brunswick, Premier Blaine Higgs is challenging this scam in court. Provinces don't get a rebate for heating schools and fueling ambulances. Carbon taxes are not revenue neutral when provinces and municipalities end up paying more for essential services. Right. When will the Green Liberal NDP coalition axe the tax or keep making health care and education more expensive?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, perhaps the member opposite doesn't remember that he himself asked Premier Higgs to go with the federal system so that more people in New Brunswick would get more money back than what they pay in carbon pricing. Perhaps he forgot that he made himself that request to his Premier, Mr. Speaker.
Wow.